I woke up last week asking myself, what did I even learn this week? Hey guys, welcome back to Nate's Learning Nuggets. Today, we are talking about troubleshooting. So, a little background information. This past week, I was working on a project to move a camera position from one place to the other. The camera had actually already been moved, but the cabling was in a temporary configuration and not a permanent one. So I wanted to move it to be permanent, running nicely through conduit, all clean and everything. So I did that, and in doing so, had one cable that I just needed to change the patch on. So I did. Everything was working great. Well, fast forward a day to rehearsal last night, and ran into a situation where one camera, a totally different camera in our setup, wasn't getting any signal pass through. So I'm like, okay, everything should be correct. Nothing was touched with it this past week with what was being done. We went through and were checking cable connections to see where the issue might be. And I found that, okay, plugging from the home run from that camera as that one cable straight to the other end where my video switcher was, something in there wasn't working correctly. So I pulled out an old cable that had been in use by the previous camera, plugged that in to the camera end, unplugged the inputs, and plugged the old cable back into that camera slot on the video switcher, and still didn't have anything. So at this point, we're like, okay, is it something else causing this in terms of a camera setting or something like that? Well, before I got to that point, a guy I was working with went to the original cable and plugged that camera straight into it, and it actually worked. It turns out what had happened was, in the process, without even realizing it, I had accidentally swapped the cables on the receiving end by the video switcher and had it incorrect, so that the cable that I was plugging into originally wasn't even plugged in, and it just needed to be plugged in correctly, and I had those cables reversed. So, two things to learn from this. Number one, never be too proud to admit when you made a mistake, as silly as it is, of swapping a couple cables around. Number two, when doing any sort of project, always be triple careful to make sure that there isn't something like that happens. Number three, label, 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 label. In this case, the cables were labeled, but the way the labeling wasn't clear enough, and it needed to be a little bit clearer in that case, which is what I learned this past week on Nate's Learning Nuggets. Hopefully that helps you with something. As another piece of information, though, you'll get a bonus one this week, and that was with that same camera configuration, we had to rule out items one at a time. So the first thing I did was make sure that any accessories connected to that home run were not in place. So there was literally one cable going between the camera and the video switcher. I also connected that camera to a line that I knew was good first to make sure that the issue wasn't on the camera's end, and then went straight to that home run. And that's how we were able to say, okay, it's something either with that cable or where that cable's plugged into, which is where we were able to identify the issue, that the cables were swapped. And I won't be making that mistake again, intentionally at least. If that does happen, it'll be a complete mistake, and we'll learn and grow from it again. But that's my nugget for today of what I learned. Have a great week, everybody.